some trains don't take you home. They take you somewhere else. Late at night, when exhaustion dulls your thoughts and the world outside the window blurs into nothing. A single missed stop is all it takes. A train that doesn't slow down. A station that isn't on any map. This is the story of Kisaragi Station. The place you reach when you go just a little too far. And hesitate just a little too long. Chapter 1. The train home at 11:40 p.m. The train departed at exactly 11:40 p.m., just like every other night. It was a time I had grown so familiar with that I no longer needed to check my watch. After 3 years of working late shifts, I could board this train with my eyes closed, knowing precisely when it would leave the station. When the fluorescent lights inside the carriage would flicker once before stabilizing. And when the calm, emotionless announcement would echo through the enclosed space. That night was no different. Or at least, that was what I believed at first. The carriage was not crowded, but not empty either. Strangers sat scattered throughout, each immersed in their own private world, headphones in, eyes fixed on glowing screens, or staring blankly into nothing at all. No one spoke, no one laughed. There was only the steady rhythm of metal rolling over rails, and the familiar scent of iron, machine oil, and recycled cold air. I sat by the window, resting my forehead against the glass. Outside, the city slid past like a fast-forwarded film, neon signs blurring together. Dark alleys vanishing in the blink of an eye. The reflection on the glass showed my own face, tired eyes, pale skin, and an emptiness I could never quite put into words. The train began to accelerate. At first, I paid no attention. This line always picked up speed after leaving the central station. But after several minutes, something small, so subtle it might have gone unnoticed by anyone less familiar, began to feel wrong. The train did not slow down. It passed the next station. Then the one after that. There was no chime to announce an arrival. No automated voice. No familiar jolt of deceleration as the brakes engaged. The train simply kept moving, faster, longer, like the tracks ahead stretched on endlessly. I lifted my head and looked at the electronic route display above the door. The name of the next station flickered, then disappeared, leaving behind an empty black space. In that moment, for the first time that night, I felt uneasy. Not immediate fear, just a faint sense of wrongness. Like missing a step on a staircase in the dark. My heart skipped a beat. I glanced around at the other passengers, hoping to see some sign that they had noticed too. No one looked up. No one reacted. The train continued on. And then, a strange question surfaced in my mind, uninvited and unsettling. If this train doesn't stop, where is it taking me? Chapter 2. The station that doesn't exist on any map. The train began to slow down after an unnaturally long stretch of track. The faint vibration rising from the floor into my feet made me breathe a little easier. As if all the unease from before had been nothing more than exhaustion playing tricks on my mind. I told myself the train might be switching lines, or that the announcement system was temporarily malfunctioning. But the silence continued. There was no explanation from the overhead speakers. Only the drawn-out screech of metal grinding against metal as the train decelerated, long, strained, and weary, like the exhausted breath of an old machine. I stood up. At the far end of the carriage hung the familiar route map. I had seen it hundreds of times, so often that I could trace each station with my finger without thinking. But now, as my eyes followed the glowing markers, a chill ran down my spine. Every station I recognized had already been passed. The indicator showing the current location was not resting on any point. It hovered between stations, flickering weakly, as if the system itself could not determine where the train currently existed. Then the train came to a complete stop. The sudden braking caused a few passengers to sway slightly, yet still no one spoke. The doors slid open with a dry hiss, revealing a sight that left me frozen in place. The platform ahead was abandoned and dark. There were no staff members. No electronic signs. No sounds of a functioning station. Weeds pushed up through cracks in the concrete. Tall lampposts leaned at awkward angles, their dim yellow light barely illuminating a few meters ahead before dissolving into darkness. I stepped off the train. I still don't know why I did. Perhaps some instinct warned me that the train would soon start moving again, and I didn't want to be carried any farther. As my foot touched the platform, I saw the station sign. It was old, the white paint peeling away. The black letters faded as if they had endured decades of wind and rain. Kisaragi. Below it, in Latin letters, Kisaragi Station. The name stirred no memory at all. I pulled out my phone, opened the map app, and quickly typed in the name I had just read. No results. I tried again. Still nothing. And in that moment, a terrifying thought slowly took shape in my mind, clear and unmistakable. I am standing in a place that does not exist. Chapter 3. The passengers WHO never turned around. I stood on the platform for several seconds, waiting for something, anything, to happen. An announcement over the speakers. A station employee rushing over with an explanation. Or at the very least, some sign that this place still belonged to the world I knew. Nothing came. Behind me, the train doors remained open. White fluorescent light spilled from the carriage onto the platform, forming a clear boundary between two spaces, one filled with familiar artificial brightness, the other swallowed by a damp, forgotten darkness. I turned back toward the train. Only 4 people remained inside. A man in work clothes sat near the door, his hands resting on his knees, shoulders slightly hunched, his gaze fixed on the floor as if counting the scratches on it. Across from him sat a high school girl in a neat uniform, her school bag placed carefully on her lap, her face completely expressionless. Farther back was an elderly woman with her head bowed low, gray hair obscuring most of her face, her hands clasped together and trembling faintly. And finally, the empty seat where I had been sitting. No one looked outside. No one looked at me. The silence was so heavy I could hear my own heartbeat. I took a step closer, intending to ask if anyone knew where we were. But the moment I opened my mouth, an uncomfortable sensation crept over me, as if breaking this silence was something I was not supposed to do. I hesitated. And in that instant of hesitation, everything shifted. From the corner of my eye, I noticed the 4 passengers had stood up. They were suddenly very close, close enough that I could feel cold radiating from their bodies. Yet I had heard no footsteps at all. I spun around. The carriage was empty. Not a single person remained. The seats they had occupied were still slightly indented, as if someone had just risen from them. The air inside felt colder, and the fluorescent lights above began to flicker erratically. My heart slammed in my chest. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the edge of the platform. That was when I heard it. The sound of the train doors closing. I turned just in time to see the train begin to move, slowly rolling toward the darkness of the tunnel. I lunged forward on instinct, reaching out, but the distance between me and the train stretched unnaturally, as if the platform itself were sliding backward. There was no one inside the carriage. No faces looking out. Only the long strip of white light, which finally vanished as the train disappeared. I was left standing alone on the platform of Kisaragi Station. And for the first time since stepping off the train, I understood something with terrifying clarity. There was no way back. Chapter 4. The signal is still there. After the train vanished completely, the platform sank into absolute silence. No more metal grinding. No wind rushing through the tracks. Not even the sound of insects. The silence at Kisaragi Station was unlike any ordinary night. It felt dense and heavy, like an invisible pressure pressing against my ears, making every breath painfully distinct. I stood still for a long time, afraid that if I moved from this spot, I would never be able to find the platform again. My hand trembled as I pulled my phone from my pocket. The screen lit up. I had signal. Full bars. My chest tightened, not with relief, but with disbelief. In a place this abandoned, the signal should have been weak or non-existent. I tried calling a coworker. No connection. I called home. The call rang, but no one answered. The ringing went on far too long, as if the other end of the line didn't truly exist. I opened the map application. The blue dot marking my location did not appear. The screen showed only a blank gray expanse, no roads, no landmarks, no boundaries. I zoomed in and out, turned GPS off and on again. Nothing changed. The feeling of being severed from the real world began to sink into my chest. Without thinking, I opened a browser and accessed an anonymous online forum. My fingers moved quickly, almost on their own, typing out everything that had happened. The train that wouldn't stop. The strange station. The name Kisaragi Station. I pressed post. Less than a minute later, a reply appeared. Greater than, "You're still there?" I swallowed hard. Another comment appeared beneath it. Greater than, "If this really is Kisaragi Station, don't stray too far from the platform." Greater than, "Don't follow the tracks." Greater than, "And please, don't answer if someone calls your name." I read the warnings again and again. The tone didn't feel like a joke or a prank. There were no emojis, no unnecessary questions, just short, cold warnings, written as if the people posting them had been here before, or had lost someone to this place. I typed a question. "What is Kisaragi Station?" After a long pause, a reply appeared. Greater than, "It's a station that only exists for people who've gone too far on their train ride." As soon as I finished reading that line, a cold gust of wind swept across the platform. And from somewhere beyond the reach of the broken lights, I heard a very faint sound. Not footsteps, but a whisper, calling a name. My name. Chapter 5. The sound from the tunnel. The voice was very faint. If I hadn't been standing alone on an empty platform, I might have dismissed it as an illusion, just my exhausted mind playing tricks on me. But at Kisaragi Station, where every breath was painfully audible, the sound was unmistakable. Someone was calling me. The voice came from the tunnel where the train had disappeared. It wasn't loud or urgent. It was low and drawn out, as if whoever was calling didn't need me to hear clearly, only to recognize it. I stood frozen, my eyes fixed on the deep darkness ahead. The tunnel swallowed all light, leaving behind a thick black void where anything could exist. My phone vibrated in my hand. A new message appeared on the forum. Greater than, "You heard it, didn't you?" I didn't remember typing that question. Greater than, "If you hear a voice coming from the tunnel, don't answer it, don't move closer. That's not where trains turn around." A chill ran down my spine. I stepped back once, then again, until my back pressed against the cold concrete wall of the platform. But the voice didn't stop. It repeated itself, slowly, each syllable growing clearer, closer, as if the speaker were approaching. Though I heard no footsteps, the sound began to change, blending into multiple overlapping tones, like several people trying to speak the same name at once. I covered my ears. It didn't help. The sound wasn't entering through my ears, it was echoing inside my head. Then, beneath the whispers, another sound emerged. Metal striking metal. Irregular. Without rhythm. Bang, bang, bang? As if something were hitting the inside wall of the tunnel, slowly. Patiently, each impact sent a faint tremor through the ground beneath my feet. I looked down at the tracks. Between the rails, I saw dark stains stretching along the gravel, old and deeply set. I didn't want to think about what they were, but my stomach twisted when I realized they didn't reflect the light. In that moment, a strange thought slipped into my mind, clear and deliberate, yet not my own. If I follow the tracks, I'll understand everything. I clenched my teeth and shook my head hard. No. I remembered the warnings too clearly. Just as I turned away from the tunnel, the voice changed. It became painfully familiar. "Come home." It was my mother's voice, gentle and tired. Exactly the way she sounded whenever she called me back late at night. My feet stopped moving. And in that moment, I realized something more terrifying than anything I had encountered so far. This place knows who I am. Chapter 6. The Man with Half a Face. I left the platform as the voice gradually faded into the air, leaving behind an uncomfortable emptiness in my head. The only path leading away from Kisaragi Station was a narrow trail to the right. Beyond the reach of the platform lights, the ground beneath my feet was soft and damp, each step producing a faint rustling sound, as if something were shifting just below the surface. On both sides, the trees grew unnaturally dense, twisted trunks and dark leaves blotting out the sky. I didn't know how long I had been walking. Time didn't move normally here. I didn't feel hungry, and I didn't feel tired. Yet there was a constant sensation that I had already missed something terribly important. Then I saw him. A man stood in the middle of the path, his back facing me. He wore an old gray business suit, the kind office workers wear after a late shift. His posture was slightly hunched, his shoulders slumped as if burdened by something invisible. I stopped, my heart racing. "Are you lost too?" I asked, my voice dry and hoarse. The man slowly turned around. Half of his face did not exist. It wasn't injured, it wasn't covered, it was as if someone had erased half of his face from reality itself. There was no eye, no nose, no mouth, only a smooth, pale emptiness where features should have been. The remaining half looked at me with a single tired eye, its gaze deep and exhausted. "You got off the train too, didn't you?" he asked. His voice was low and rough, echoing as if it came from very far away. I nodded, unable to look at the empty side of his face for too long. "Don't go any farther," he said quietly. "If you still remember the way home, turn back." "Back where?" I asked. "The train is gone." He smiled, a crooked smile that only appeared on the remaining half of his face. I said the same thing. He replied, 7 years ago." 7 years? I repeated, my throat tightening. "You've been here for 7 years?" "No," he shook his head. "I've walked it 7 times." He turned and pointed down the trail ahead. "Every time I think I'm about to escape, this place bends time and sends me back to the beginning. Each time that happens, I lose something." I swallowed hard and looked again at his face. "You've lost?" "Myself," he answered without hesitation. "Don't you feel it, that sensation of slowly fading?" I opened my mouth to deny it, and realized I could no longer clearly remember what my own face looked like. The man studied me for a long moment, then said something that made my blood run cold. "If you still remember your name, don't let this place speak it." Chapter 7. The Shrine Without a God. The path ended abruptly at a small clearing. At its center stood a low, decaying shrine, nearly swallowed by the surrounding forest. The roof tiles were cracked, thick moss filling every crevice. The wooden pillars of the torii gate leaned at unnatural angles, their red paint peeled away until only dark, weathered stains remained. There was no name plaque, no bell rope, no sign that this place was still worshipped. The man with half a face stopped at the foot of the stone steps. "You shouldn't go inside," he said, "but you don't really have a choice anymore." I stepped onto the stone stairs. Beneath my feet, the steps were worn hollow, as if countless people had once knelt here, not to pray, but to beg to leave. Inside the shrine, there was no statue, no deity, only a large mirror, standing upright where a sacred object should have been. Its wooden frame was cracked and splintered, the glass clouded with age, reflecting the dim light in a warped, uneven way. I saw myself in the mirror, but not completely. The reflection lagged behind my movements by a fraction of a second. When I tilted my head, it remained still for a brief moment, as if deciding whether or not to imitate me. "This is where people come when they no longer know who to pray to," the man said behind me. "When they realize there's no God ruling this place." I swallowed. "Then what is here?" He didn't answer right away. In the mirror, I saw a shadow standing behind me, taller than I was. Blurred and indistinct, its outline wavering like smoke. It didn't touch me, yet it stood close enough that I felt a cold breath against the back of my neck. I spun around. There was nothing there. When I looked back at the mirror, the shadow was gone, only my reflection remained, pale, distorted, and strangely unfamiliar. "This shrine doesn't worship gods," the man finally said. "It worships what's left behind after this place grinds a person down." "Does praying help at all?" I asked quietly. He shook his head. "No, but if you stand in front of that mirror long enough, Kisaragi will learn how to become you." The moment he finished speaking, I noticed something that made my heart seize. The reflection in the mirror was smiling. And I wasn't. Chapter 8. The Girl Without a Shadow. I left the shrine without daring to look back at the mirror even once. Not because I was afraid of what was inside it, but because I was afraid of seeing myself no longer whole. The path continued deeper into the forest. The light grew thinner. the trees more crowded, the air cold and damp enough that every breath carried the smell of rotting leaves and wet soil. I walked slowly, forcing myself to stay conscious, but my thoughts kept slipping through my fingers like sand. Then I saw her. The girl stood by the side of the path, beneath a broken lamppost. Her high school uniform was unnaturally clean, painfully out of place in the ruined landscape. Her school bag was neatly slung over her shoulder, her black hair tied low, not a single strand out of place. She was the same girl I had seen on the train. "You finally made it," she said calmly, as if we had arranged to meet here. I stopped, my heart pounding. "How long have you been here?" She tilted her head, thinking for a very long time, so long that the silence began to feel oppressive. "I don't remember," she answered at last, "but it doesn't matter anymore." The lamplight above her flickered. By instinct, I glanced down at her feet, and my stomach tightened. She had no shadow. The light shone directly onto the ground, yet beneath her there was only a perfect emptiness, as if the light itself refused to touch her. "Do you remember your name?" she asked. The simple question emptied my mind. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. I knew I had a name. I knew people had called me by it for years. But when I tried to grasp it, my thoughts closed around nothing. The girl smiled, a sad, gentle smile. "Then it's already starting," she said softly. "Kisaragi doesn't take your body. It takes the things that let you know who you are." "Did you answer the voice?" I asked. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she stepped backward. The distance between us stretched unnaturally, as if the space itself were being pulled apart. "Don't stay too long," she said. "Once you lose your shadow, you can't go back." The wind passed through the trees. The lamppost went dark. When the light returned, the girl was gone. Only the path ahead remained, and a growing hollowness spreading through my chest. And for the first time, I asked myself, if I forget who I am, will there still be a reason to return at all? Chapter 9. The Rules of Kisaragi Station. I found the wooden sign at the moment I began to doubt my own memory. It was leaning crookedly against a hollow, rotting tree beside the path. If I hadn't accidentally kicked it, I might have walked past without ever noticing it, like so many things in this place. It only appeared when you were no longer fully capable of noticing. The board was old beyond measure. Cracks ran across its surface like dried veins, and the carved letters were deep and uneven, as if whoever had written them had done so with desperate force, or in absolute terror. I crouched down and brushed away the thin layer of dust. The words revealed themselves. 1. Those who leave the train must not return. 2. Those who clearly remember their name will be called. 3. Those who answer the call will remain. 4. Kisaragi does not keep bodies, only consciousness. I read each line slowly, carefully, as though misunderstanding even a single word might count as breaking the rules. The first line weighed heavily on my chest. I had left the train. That meant any path back no longer existed in the way I understood it. The second line sent a chill through me. Those who clearly remember their name will be called. I had been trying to remember my name. I had been afraid of forgetting it. But if I did remember, would this place call me the way it had from the tunnel? The third rule was brutally simple. Those who answer the call will remain. Not die. Not disappear. Just remain. Forever. I lingered on the final line. Kisaragi does not keep bodies, only consciousness. I looked down at my hands. They were still there. I could feel the ground beneath my feet, the cold in the air, the steady beating of my heart. But if this place only kept consciousness, then what, exactly, was carrying my form right now? A vague memory surfaced, the moment on the train, my reflection in the window, the shadow that lagged behind me by a fraction of a second. Or perhaps, I was the shadow. That was when I heard whispering behind me. It wasn't calling my name. It was reciting the rules. One line at a time, spoken in overlapping voices, raspy, distorted, like Kisaragi Station itself was reminding itself of the laws it obeyed. I didn't turn around. I didn't respond. I simply stood there, realizing something far more terrifying than everything I had experienced so far. The rules here are not meant to protect anyone. They exist only to explain why no one ever returns. Chapter 10. The Blood-Stained Tracks. I started running when I realized I could no longer stay still. Not because something was chasing me from behind, but because remaining in one place felt like dissolving, like a drop of water sinking into a perfectly still surface, vanishing without leaving a ripple. The narrow path led me back to the tracks. I couldn't remember which way I had turned, or why I had returned here at all, but when I saw the two steel rails stretching out before me, parallel, endless, I understood that Kisaragi Station always guided people back to the same point. The tracks were unnaturally dark. Under the weak light, the metal did not reflect as it should have. Instead, it absorbed the light, revealing deep reddish stains clinging to the edges of the rails and seeping into the gravel between them. I knew what it was, even though I didn't want to. The air smelled heavy with rust and something far older, like blood that had been exposed for too long. Each step I took sent the sound of my shoes striking stone echoing forward and backward. I did not turn around, but I heard it. Other footsteps began to match mine, not faster, not slower. They mirrored my breathing, my pace, as if whatever walked with me didn't need sight to know where I was. My phone vibrated violently in my pocket. I almost didn't dare look, but I pulled it out. Greater than, if you see the tracks, it's already too late. The message was only one line. No sender. No timestamp. I slipped. My knees slammed into the gravel, pain flaring sharp and immediate, but the pain frightened me more than comforted me. Because it proved I could still feel. I pushed myself back up, and in that moment, I saw something that made my heart stop. Between the rails were handprints. They didn't lead in a single direction. They overlapped and tangled, stretching along the tracks, like countless people had once crawled through this place, trying to escape, or trying to go back. And all of them had failed. A thought formed in my mind, clear and unavoidable. These tracks aren't meant for trains. They're meant to guide something. I staggered to my feet, trembling, and realized the footsteps behind me had stopped. That sudden silence was more terrifying than any sound. Then, very softly, a voice spoke right beside my ear, no name, just a single phrase. "You've arrived." And as I looked toward the far end of the tracks, where the darkness was so dense that even light could not reach, I understood the truth. I had never been running away. I had only been walking the path Kisaragi had already chosen for me. Chapter 11. Time Shattered. I don't know how long I stood at the end of the tracks. At Kisaragi Station, the idea of how long had lost all meaning. There was no sun to cast shadows. No clock that worked the way it should. Even my heartbeat no longer felt reliable, sometimes racing until it hurt. Sometimes slowing so much that I feared it had stopped altogether. The phone in my hand kept lighting up, then going dark. 11:40 p.m. 1:12 a.m. 11:40 p.m. 12 a.m. The numbers jumped erratically. Like a cruel joke, I locked the screen, opened it again. Time refused to settle, as if someone were endlessly rewinding the same moment. And then I realized it. I had never left the instant I stepped off the train. Everything that followed, the abandoned platform, the forest path, the man with half a face, the shrine without a god, felt like layers painted over a single moment, stretched impossibly thin so that I could neither return nor move forward. Dizziness washed over me. I dropped to one knee, bracing myself against the cold stones. When I looked up, I saw myself. Not a reflection. Not an illusion. Another me stood several meters away, on the same set of tracks, the same clothes, the same stains on the sleeves. His eyes were empty, but carried a familiarity that made my chest tighten. "You made it here too," the other me said. The voice was mine, but stripped of emotion, like a recording replayed too many times. "Who are you?" I asked, even though I already knew. "I'm you," he replied, "after you've gone around one more time." He pointed down the tracks. "Every time you reach this place, time cracks a little more, and each time, a part of you is left behind to keep the loop going." I looked at him, then down at my hands. In that moment, I couldn't tell whether I was standing at the beginning of this story, or somewhere far past its end. "Is there a way out?" I asked. He was silent for a long time. "There is," he finally said, "but not everyone can accept it." As soon as he spoke those words, the space around us began to tremble. The scenery fractured like shattered glass, the tracks splintered. Darkness poured in, swallowing everything. Within the sound of breaking reality, I heard countless voices layered together, people who had stood here before, in this same moment, asking the same question. And all of them had received the same answer. Time at Kisaragi Station doesn't kill you. It simply keeps you long enough for you to erase yourself from the flow. Chapter 12. The ones WHO vanished. When the space finally stabilized, I was no longer standing on the tracks. I was in the middle of a sparse forest, where trees grew in uneven clusters, as if they no longer remembered where they were meant to stand. A gray, colorless light blanketed everything, neither day nor night. There were no shadows, no sense of direction. I began to walk, not toward any destination, but because standing still made my sense of existence feel thinner, more fragile, as if it might fade away at any moment. That was when I saw them. People stood scattered throughout the forest, motionless like forgotten statues. Some wore school uniforms, some were dressed in office clothes. Others wore outfits so outdated they felt out of place in time itself. Their eyes were open, but unfocused. Their mouths moved slightly, yet no sound came out. I approached a middle-aged man. "Do you remember who you are?" I asked. It took several seconds before his eyes shifted, not to look at me, but to look straight through me. "The next train," he whispered. "It's coming soon." Another voice joined in, then another, and another, until they were all whispering the same sentence, overlapping into a hollow chorus. "The next train is coming." I understood then. These were not people waiting for a train. They were people who had waited too long. Their consciousness was trapped in the final moment of hope, the belief that if they waited just a little longer, something would change. But Kisaragi Station did not allow that. It left them here, frozen forever, like markers left behind to measure past failures. A young woman slowly turned her head toward me. Her face was so blurred that her features blended together. I couldn't tell her age. I couldn't tell how long she had been here. "Don't wait," she said weakly. "Waiting is the fastest way to disappear." "Are you still alive?" I asked, my throat tightening. She shook her head. "We're not dead either." A wind passed through the forest, but it didn't move the leaves. It passed through the people instead, making their shapes ripple slightly, like images on a screen about to go dark. I stepped back, my chest heavy. As I turned to leave, I heard a voice behind me, one I knew too well. My own voice, older, more exhausted. "This time, what will you choose?" I didn't turn around, because I knew that if I saw the one speaking, I would no longer be able to tell which of us was truly me, and which had been left behind at Kisaragi Station long ago. Chapter 13. The truth about the station. I don't know how I found my way out of the forest. Only when Kisaragi Station appeared before me once again, intact, silent, and terrifyingly familiar, did I realize that every path in this place bent back toward the same origin. The station had never disappeared. It had only been waiting. I stood on the platform, in the exact spot where I had stepped off the train the first time. Everything looked nearly identical: cracked concrete, dim yellow lights, the faded station sign. But this time, I looked at it differently, not with vague fear, but with heavy understanding. A voice spoke, not from the tunnel, not from behind me, but from the air itself. "So you finally understand." No shape appeared, no form revealed itself, yet I could feel its presence clearly, something that did not require a body to exist. "Kisaragi Station is not a destination," the voice continued. "It is an overflow point." I closed my eyes. Fragments of memory connected on their own, the unmoving figures in the forest. The man with half a face. The girl without a shadow. The other versions of myself. It is where people who no longer fully belong to any single moment are pushed out of the flow. The voice said, "Those who hesitate, those who stand between leaving and staying, those who board the train, while part of them no longer truly wants to go home." I opened my eyes. "So I was chosen?" I asked. "No," the voice replied. "You fell." The words hurt more than any threat could have. I remembered sitting on the train, my exhaustion, my emptiness, The feeling of going home to nothing that truly awaited me. My body had boarded the train, but my mind had already been elsewhere. Kisaragi does not pull anyone down. The voice went on. It only opens its doors to those who have already begun leaving from within. I understood. This station did not hunt people. It filtered them. Those still firmly anchored to the real world would never see Kisaragi Station. Those who stepped onto this platform had already carried a fracture inside them, and this place merely widened it. Do I still have a chance? I asked softly. The voice was silent for a long time. Yes, it finally said, but the price is that you will never be the same again. I looked down at the platform beneath my feet. I no longer felt fear. Only a deep, aching sense of regret. Because I understood at last that what Kisaragi Station kept was not people, but the moments when they were no longer certain they wanted to keep living forward. Chapter 14. The Final Train. The sound of a train whistle came without warning. It wasn't loud. It wasn't urgent. It was a low, drawn-out tone, like a deep breath taken by something that had existed here far longer than any human ever could. The tunnel ahead began to glow. Not with the familiar white light of a commuter train, but with a dull, grayish haze, soft, cloudy, as if fog had been compressed into shape. The train slowly emerged from the darkness, its movement heavy and deliberate, carrying the sensation not of arrival, but of finality. The doors opened. Someone was already sitting inside. I took a step forward, then stopped. They lifted their heads and looked at me. Pale, hollow faces, terrifyingly familiar. Some I had seen in the forest. Some I had passed in the gray emptiness. And then I saw myself. Another version of me sat near the door, hands placed neatly on his knees, eyes vacant, like a doll arranged exactly where it was meant to be. He didn't look at me, only stared straight ahead. Waiting. The train only needs one. Kisaragi's voice echoed, coming from nowhere. It is never two. I understood immediately. This was not a train meant to take someone away. It was a train meant to decide who would continue to exist. If you board, the voice continued, your consciousness will be reattached to the flow of time, but the one sitting there will remain. I looked at the version of me in the seat. He was identical in every detail, but something was missing. Not memory, not emotion, but will. He was what I would become if I let Kisaragi grind me down long enough. And if I don't board? I asked. Then you will board in your place. The voice replied, and you will remain, like the others. I stepped into the carriage. No one reacted. No one looked at me. Everyone sat motionless, like mannequins arranged long ago. The air inside the train was thick and cold, so still that I could hear my own thoughts. I stood before the other me. In that moment, I understood the final truth. Kisaragi Station does not steal people. It replaces them. On one side was me, exhausted, terrified, but still afraid of disappearing. On the other was him, empty, but already accustomed to staying behind. I took a deep breath. And I made my choice. Chapter 15. The Final Post. I woke up on the train at 11:40 p.m. Everything felt unnervingly normal. The fluorescent lights glowed evenly. The wheels rolled smoothly along the tracks. The familiar smell of metal and recycled air filled the carriage. Strangers sat scattered around me, heads bowed over their phones, each locked inside their own quiet world. There was no abandoned platform. No darkness. No Kisaragi Station. The train slowed at my stop, exactly as it should. The doors opened. I stepped out. My feet touched the solid, familiar ground of the station. Commuters passed by in a steady stream. The noise of everyday life rushing back all at once, so ordinary that I almost laughed in relief. No one remembered anything unusual. I asked a coworker about the train the night before. They looked at me with confusion. The train schedule showed no irregularities, no delays, no station named Kisaragi. I went home. Everything was there, my belongings, the familiar air, the warm glow of the lights, exactly where it should be. And yet, something inside me no longer fit this world perfectly. Like a piece had been replaced with something nearly identical, but not quite right. That night, I couldn't sleep. At 11:40 p.m., my phone vibrated. A notification from the anonymous forum lit up the screen. A new post. Greater than, I'm at a strange station called Kisaragi. The train won't stop. Does anyone know where this is? There was no username. No location. No timestamp. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I looked up at the window across the room. My reflection in the glass lagged behind me by a fraction of a second. Not much. Just enough for me to notice. I turned off the phone. I didn't reply to the post. Because I knew that somewhere, beyond maps, beyond time, beyond familiar train routes, Kisaragi Station is still waiting. Station. And if one night your train doesn't stop, remember this. Don't get off. If this story made you uneasy, that's because it isn't really over. Kisaragi Station doesn't disappear when the train leaves. It waits, quietly, between moments, between decisions, between the places you're no longer sure you belong. So if one night, your train doesn't stop where it should, and the lights outside look unfamiliar, remember this. Don't get off.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.